So Anna has been saying that
there's no reason that would get me to switch to Sony.
And today we'll find out if that's actually true. For years, both of us have been using different systems. She's been using the Canon system, she has a Canon EOS R, and I've been using the Sony system. I have a Sony a7 III, before that I had a Sony a6300. And using these different systems has certain negative aspects to it, such as not being able to switch out lenses. So she can't use my lenses, I can't use her lenses. Having to buy also certain gear double, such as batteries, lenses, and other things that are only compatible with one of the two brands. And lastly, it's kind of hard for us to switch between cameras. If she uses my camera, she has no idea how it works. If I use her camera, I always have to take 10 minutes to figure out where which button is that I'm used to. The solution to our problem is simply to decide to switch to one of the two brands and sell the other one's gear, which neither of us want to do. In this video, we'll be going through the reasons that impact us the most, that are most important for our situation. This might vary from person to person, yet we'll be comparing Canon and Sony and seeing to which system we will be switching in the future.
Canon makes amazing camera bodies. The grip is the best one I've tried so far, the display is amazing, the EVF is amazing. They're just very easy to work with.
So it's true that Canon has a better grip, it has a better EVF, it has a better display. I have noticed that while using Anna's camera, I've noticed that comparing her camera to my camera, the Sony a7 III just doesn't handle as well as the EOS R. It's well known that Canon cameras have an amazing grip, they just feel great in your hands, but I would also argue that it has gotten better with Sony. So for example, if you look at the EVF, while the a7 III's EVS only has 2.36 million dots, the Canon EOS R's EVF has 3.69 million. Regarding though that we'll be switching to a newer camera, the Sony a7 IV has the same resolution as an EVF as the Canon EOS R has, meaning there's no difference in that. Furthermore, also the Sony a7 IV's display has gotten a bit better, bumping the resolution to 1.037 million dots compared to 920,000 dots in the a7 III beforehand. I do have to admit that the Canon EOS R still has the best display though, because it doubles the resolution at 2.1 million dots and it also has a bigger display. Yet personally, I never felt like that was super important because I often use the EVF to actually review my pictures. So in this case, I would say there's not really a point for either system. They're both very comparable.
The new Canon R6 Mark II is just way better than the Sony a7 IV.
So this argument is absolutely true. After Canon had revealed the EOS R6 Mark II, I was thinking about switching to Canon immediately. I really like the fact that unlike the Sony a7 IV, the Canon had 4K 60 with no crop. On the a7 IV, there's a 1.5 crop, meaning you film in APS-C mode. It had the option to film raw video via the HDMI output. That's not possible with the a7 IV. And you could also shoot up to 40 frames with the digital shutter or electronic shutter. With the a7 IV, you're limited to 10, both electronic and with the normal mechanical shutter. So there are several reasons why the R6 is better than the Sony a7 IV. Yet what you have to keep in mind though is that the Canon is also more expensive. While the Sony is available for around $2,300 to $2,400 nowadays, the Canon still costs $2,900, at least in the EU. That's a €500 gap, which also leads into the next argument being lens selection. If you want to stick to RF lenses, which are the new ones made for the new Canon RF system, there are less options available than for Sony. While Canon strictly only goes with their own lenses, meaning there are only Canon lenses for their system at the moment, at least. Yes, I know you could adapt older lenses, EF lenses from Canon, Sigma, and Tamron. The newer ones do not have that option. There is no third-party support for the RF system at this moment. This is not the case for Sony. This leads to another point being, well, there are just generally more lenses for E-mount than for RF mount. Meaning I have more options available and I can choose more. This will also lead in it being more future-proof. So I can buy the lenses I need now, and I'll be able to use them in the future with no problem, while spending less money on these lenses because I can get a Sigma instead of a Sony. While I couldn't get a Sigma instead of a Canon because even if I adapted the EOF lens, the autofocus in video mode wouldn't be the same as with the RF lenses. Therefore, that wasn't really an option for me. So this argument basically nullifies the fact that the R6 Mark II is such a great camera, meaning we're still at the same point. Both Sony and Canon are great systems, and we haven't really made a decision on which system we'll use in the future. But there is one fact concerning our situation which will influence the direction we'll be headed to. And that is, well, I have more lenses than Anna does. This would mean that I would have to get the exact same lenses for Canon, while if she switches to Sony, we would be able to get newer lenses and actually increase the amount that we have. So with our budget in mind, we calculated the two options we had, which was number one, we go with Canon. Anna would have kept her EOS R. I would have sold my gear, gotten an EOS R6 Mark II, a 7200 f4, and a 24-70 f2.8. The other option would have been to get two Sony a7 IVs, to get a 35mm Sigma 1.4, a 90mm macro, and as well a DJI Mini 3 Pro. For option 2, I would have sold my a7 III and I would have sold her gear. But both of these options would have cost approximately the same. But if you look at what we get in both, there is a little advantage on the Sony side, right? So we both get an amazing new camera, which we can use, and we have more lens variability, meaning, well, we have a 35, we have a 90, we have a 24-70, and we have a 7200. Basically, there are two full sets. We have two wider lenses and we have two more tele lenses. While with the switch to Canon, we would have been stuck basically with two tele lenses and one wider lens. This would also mean that Anna would still be using an EOS R, which is quite old by now. So it has a couple years on its back, and it would be time to switch to a new camera in 1 or 2 years' time. Therefore, well,
we switched to Sony.
So yes, we switched to Sony. We got two Sony a7 IVs, we got the 35mm Sigma, we got a 90mm, and we haven't gotten the drone yet, but we're thinking about it. And in my opinion, yes, this was the correct decision because of, well, the budgetary reasons, right? We can save money on lenses, meaning in the future we'll be able to spend less to get the same quality as we would have had to spend on Canon lenses and the Canon system itself. Therefore, yes, we have less features. I know I don't have 4K 60 uncropped, but I'm quite happy with the 4K 60 cropped version on the Sony a7 IV. I actually have been using it at my job for quite some time now, and I pretty much love it. I love the 33 megapixels. I love the fact that 4K 60 is available, even though it is a cropped version, and I love the fact that you can now film with 10-bit color. All of these features made me feel like, yes, this is a great camera. It also feels way better in my hands than my Sony a7 III. So therefore, it is definitely a bump up for me, and it's also a little bump up for Anna. Now, I do want to make clear that the decision that you should make should also depend on your situation. Maybe you do not have lenses already in line for the Sony system, and therefore you can think about switching to Canon. Remember, there are now even newer cameras than there were when we did the switch. So we got our cameras about 3 months ago, and back then there was no Canon EOS R8, which is basically an R6 Mark II without the IBIS. And that's pretty awesome. Like, it's way cheaper, it's $1,000 cheaper, meaning you will be saving money, which you can then invest into lenses. Also, you could invest into used EF lenses and adapt those onto the Canon system. It just didn't feel future-proof to me. I know this might vary from person to person, but I rather have the RF lenses right away instead of having to switch to them in the next 4 years or so. So yes, this is how it came out. We're pretty happy, or at least I'm pretty happy. And I hope Anna will be happy in the future. And that's it for this video, and well, see you in the next one.